Nothing on the show is to be construed as legal advice. The contents of this show are for informational purposes only.
Hello, welcome to the Consumer Law Cast, Know Your Rights, with me, Abbas, and we have probably the best show yet. I'm very, very excited. We've got an all-star cast here. We've got Rahul, Ravipudi, and John Fiske. I could do a whole show about their resumes, but for you, the consumers out there, try and keep it a little bit shorter than I would usually spend. So John Fiske went to law school with me, believe it or not. And in 2007, the San Diego magazine said that he's one of the top 50 people you should actually look out for big things that they're going to do in the future. Boy, were they wrong. No, I'm just kidding. He's just done amazingly well. Just to give you a couple of things that he's been responsible for, he's one of the lead lawyers that represents a ton of the municipalities against Monsanto for the manufacture and sale of PCB products. He also was a massive part to do with the fire litigation, actually with Rahul as well. And he's been responsible for not millions, but billions of dollars of settlement for consumers in California just in the last couple of years. And most recently, congratulations, John, he is the recipient of the 2020 Clay Award, which is the Consumer Lawyers Award of the Year for legal significance and, bringing significance to the practice of law and the profession and, the work that he is doing. So congrats, John, and you're a real underachiever, man.
Yeah, thanks.
And thanks for being on the show.
Things for you to say.
Well, you paid me well. And our other guest, honestly, I would not be doing him any service at all, but he is genuinely one of the best trial lawyers in the country, not just California. Rahul Ravipudi. And he's got so many great awards, including 160 million plus award out of Las Vegas for an amazing case that he tried. And he has had cases that have actually had law made as it pertains to the subject matter. Like, for example, Jerry Brown put in the signed into legislation, the Paul Lee School bus safety law. Is that correct, Rahul?
Yeah.
He's been a trial lawyer of the year by the Consumer Attorneys of Los Angeles and a twice finalist with the Consumer Attorneys of California. And honestly, I was present when the case was being presented to the board, and he should definitely have at least won on one of those occasions, if not both. And to top it off, these two guys are amazing individuals, just really good human beings. So that makes it a little bit more annoying for me to introduce them. The only thing I can tell you with a straight face that I am better at them at is Peloton, but Rahul actually challenges the veracity of my scores.
Very much so. Unless you're like Lance Armstrong or something like that, there is a loosening of the gears on Abbas's machine, and that's the only reason he does as well as he does, because otherwise you would have a much less doughy look to you. Okay.
Well, that doughy look is deceptive. I'm just very nimble. And just to appease you, I bought the treadmill Peloton so that you can beat me at something. Right there. not just the bike.
Good.
Anyway, so we're really lucky to have you two guys on, and you're doing some really, really important work, not just in the JUUL litigation, which is really the main subject matter of this podcast, guys. You're just doing amazing work for consumers nationwide. But the JUUL litigation is what we want to talk about. You both are co-lead representatives on a host of you represent a host of municipalities in California, from what I can tell, and maybe in other jurisdictions too. So, Rahul, why don't you just tell us, first of all, is it just in California you represent municipalities, or outside of California also?
No, we represent really school districts are our primary clients, in addition to county offices of education. And there are other counties that we represent as well, but both inside and outside of California. But John and I have been appointed as co-lead counsel together for the public entities and school districts in the JCCP proceeding, which is pending in the Los Angeles Superior Court, which is the state court here. So all of our cases as of now are currently before Judge Ann Jones in the Los Angeles Superior Court.
Right, and so for the benefit of our consumer viewers and listeners, the JCCP is essentially kind of where all the cases are being consolidated in one court in LA. So I know the case is currently in litigation, and I don't really want to get into the weeds about it. And also, one of our rules on this show is that we don't talk legalese too much because our main viewership and listenership are lay people and consumers. So, John. Kind of, in layperson's language, what is the main theory, or not theory, but like the main allegation against JUUL by the school districts that you put in your complaints?
Yeah, essentially what we've alleged against JUUL is that it has created a public health epidemic all across the nation, not only in California, but really all across all 50 states. And the way that JUUL did that is by promoting products that are highly addictive directly to youth and to minors, even though they knew that that was illegal and wrong to do. These products were promoted directly to minors in a couple of different ways. The first way is that they used very fanciful flavors and colors to sell the products. So, for example, they used flavors like bubblegum or mango or cream soda or these types of flavors that, quite frankly, as a adult person, I'm not persuaded by bubblegum anything, but a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old person might very much be persuaded by a bubblegum flavored product, no matter what that product is. And the second way that they promoted it was by promoting it directly to minors using avenues such as nickjr.com or 17magazine.com and many different platforms within the social media sphere to engage with minors directly. So the avenues that they used were direct to minors, and the promotion of the product and the design of the product itself was directed directly to minors. And by doing so, they were essentially putting these highly, highly addictive products directly into the hands of minors. These are nicotine products. They're highly addictive, and they can actually change the biochemical function of the brain as somebody is using them in a way that makes these young people addictive. They also used celebrity look-alike models and other types of marketing tools to make the use of these products as if someone were in a party type atmosphere. So there were models that looked a lot like Jessica Simpson or other types of famous celebrities, and they showed these models jumping up in the air or surrounded by bright colors and bright lights. And they did these things that were very, very conducive to attracting young people. And so doing this has caused a national health epidemic that is really playing itself out all over school campuses across the nation.
Wow. So I mean, I didn't really.
Have
know
you seen
much.
some of these ads, Abbas?
No, that's exactly what I was going to ask you about. Like, I haven't really heard much about this litigation. It blows my mind that a nicotine manufacturer and seller of products related to nicotine is advertising on forums which are exclusively almost for children. So, I mean, talk to me a little bit more about the adverts, Rahul, if you can.
Yeah. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so here, have you seen this? So on the left, you have a JUUL ad, and on the right, you have a cool cigarette ad from, back in the day, the old tobacco look. Yeah. And these are this is straight out of the old and big tobacco playbook of having these hip, cool ads with these very pretty young models that young children would feel like they could relate to or aspire to be. And so they do that because that's the market they're actually targeting. And they do a very good job of targeting these young children. And in addition to that, they have such high concentrations of nicotine in the actual JUUL pods. And these pods and the actual JUUL device itself is hip looking. Everything about it is to make it attractive to children. And so they do that. And then with the high addiction, within days, kids can get addicted. And when you're dealing with children in their preteens or teens, then their brain development is still ongoing. That level of concentration can lead to the stunting of developmental growth for these children. And it's, John and I, we represent a number of school districts, and the evidence will be that there is a wealth of correlation between this JUUL epidemic and the starting of, the decline in educational performance of students.
He's already got his opening prepared. The evidence is going to show, John. I love it. Like, I'm honestly, I'm just kind of blown away because I wasn't that educated, apart from I'd done some preliminary research in preparation for this call. But what you just showed was just kind of crazy. And is there any data as to whether the nicotine in JUUL is as addictive as, let's say, a normal like Marlboro cigarette or something like that?
Yeah, there is. And in fact, what it is it's delivering more nicotine per puff. And that's really the key, because kids are using these when they shouldn't be. And one of the things that they're doing is they're using these devices that look like USB drives that could plug into a computer or some other computer type of device to be charged. And then they tend to hide them in jackets or in backpacks, or just kind of almost hiding them in plain sight, attached to computers for adults who don't know what they really look like. And they puff them relatively quickly, or they're hanging around puffing them in sort of a clandestine way. And as they're doing so, they're oftentimes puffing them very quickly in order to get that nicotine high, or to hang out with their friends in as quick a way as possible. So they're puffing these very quickly and actually receiving more nicotine per puff than a traditional cigarette. And because they don't have that classic cigarette smell as they exhale, or as the vapor comes out of the device, it's not something that adults can readily pick up on or readily know what it is. And so the way in which these devices were designed were particularly attractive to students doing, and to kids doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. And that's exactly what's happened on campuses all over the United States. So kids are actually bringing these devices, and these kids now being addicted, or feeling extremely pressured to be cool and be part of the group. They're bringing these devices onto campuses, and they're actually using these devices on campuses and in bathrooms. In fact, there was a very effective and sort of famous meme that was circulated on the internet that took a picture of an inside of a bathroom showing a couple of urinals, and it said, why are there toilets in the JUUL room? In other words, they've completely co-opted a bathroom to become the JUUL room. And the schools have had to do things like take doors off of stalls. They've had to dig these devices out of the plumbing from certain toilets, because kids are smoking them, and then as an adult or a supervisor is coming, they'll throw them down the toilet and flush them. They've had to install vaping detectors into bathrooms and other parts of the school to detect when someone is using these vaping devices. They've had to lock bathrooms during certain school hours. They've had to hire new staff in order to monitor enforcement and discipline these types of actions. Schools have also engaged in preventative campaigns and assemblies and education in order to stop this tobacco use. So what you're seeing is becoming a theme in large multi-billion-dollar corporate behavior, which is that they're going to sell a lot of product now and create a market and create an addictive consumer base. And then they're going to allow public entities to clean up the mess. They're going to allow public entities to do what public entities have to do, which is, look after these kids in the best way that they know possible. And so that's where all of these taxpayer dollars and public resources are going out the door to really basically subsidize JUUL's profit. And that's wrong. And that's what we're looking to prevent.
Sure. Rahul, I've got like a two-tiered question for you. Like the first one is, was there a kind of a outcry or a call to action that you and John answered in your lawsuits as a response to this outcry? And if there was, what was it? And the second part of the question is, now that you have filed multiple of these lawsuits that are now coordinated in LA, what has been the response from the parents and just average, John Smith on Main Street, like to these lawsuits?
So the outcry and the central focus for John and I in particular in representing the clients we do, including the Los Angeles Unified School District, San Diego Unified School District, and a large number of other school districts, is that these schools, this is all government money, and this money is a very limited budget for these public schools. These public schools need to educate to the best of their abilities a large number of students and the student population. And in doing so, every dollar counts. And
Right.
every dollar that is spent on trying to eradicate, mitigate, or fight against the JUUL epidemic is a dollar taken away from getting books, getting better educations, getting a good student to teacher ratio. And that is at the punishment and at the detriment of not just the students who are getting sick from the JUUL products, but even the students who have nothing to do with JUUL consumption. And so this has really been an outcry to make the school districts not be ground zero for the JUUL epidemic, and let them actually be a place where students get an opportunity to learn, thrive, and have that opportunity to get into colleges of higher learning and pursue their hopes and dreams. And then at the same time, it's just an absolute tragedy. And I've got three boys.
Yeah.
And I think about them on every single case that I've ever worked on, and what future do we have in store for them, right? And I just think it's an absolute shame that for the opportunity to get people addicted to products of any sort, and it's just so transparent here what JUUL's doing, that you steal these opportunities from all of these innocent children who, because it looks cool, because they're told it's safe, try it, then get hooked, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so there has been, and I think that's to the second part of your question, there has been nothing but a positive response to our efforts to eradicate this epidemic.
Sure. I mean, from somebody looking in, I think it's a really righteous cause that you guys are pursuing. But I think, I want to put kind of something to bed as well, because there is a fallacy out there that plaintiffs' lawyers are just are driving up lawsuits to try, it's about earning money, and these particular lawsuits, because you're representing municipalities or school districts, that it may be costing the taxpayer money in order for you guys to go and follow this cause. But that's not the case, right? Because when private lawyers are representing municipalities or school districts, a lot of the time it's done on contingency, and I'll leave it to you guys to respond to that. But that's at least my understanding.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. It's interesting. Not only is this not a quote unquote, lawyer-driven case to the extent that that's a real thing or a real criticism, but we represent school districts that are in all parts of the geo-demographic, social demographic spectrum. So we represent school districts in traditionally conservative neighborhoods or conservative counties. We represent school districts in traditionally liberal counties or neighborhoods. We represent urban, rural, suburban, coastal, inland, northern, southern. I mean, we represent districts of all walks of life all over the entire state of California. And what's interesting is that all of these lawsuits have to be approved by the board members of each school district. And the board members of the school districts have 5 members from the community who are looking out for their kids' best interests. And what's really interesting is I'm trying to recall right now, and this is all public, so I'm not providing any information that isn't already public. I'm trying to think of one no vote we've received. Just can't think of one. So in other words, what I'm saying is that when this issue is presented to board members, who are on all ends of the political spectrum, we have received unanimous votes over and over and over again, votes for protecting children. And that's really, really important to understand, whether you're there to protect taxpayer resources, whether you're there to protect children, whether you're there to stick it to a bad company doing bad acts, whether you're there because you just think on this particular one issue it makes sense. We have been receiving unanimous board votes. And board members are elected, so not only are they acting based on their own volition, they're acting based in a representative capacity for their communities. So
Right.
now you can imagine that you've got communities that elect representatives that are voting unanimously to stop JUUL from engaging in this level of conduct and to recoup those taxpayer dollars, and that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And I think you kind of touched upon something which kind of brought about another question in my mind. You said, you brought these lawsuits in from different, social and, different demographics from across the state and beyond. And do you think that this JUUL epidemic that we're talking about has maybe hit areas where there's a ethnic minority, they're kind of have a majority of ethnic minorities in comparison to Caucasian populations?
Actually, the answer is no. What's really interesting is that these JUUL products have really reached all walks of life. Whether you are a person from a wealthy family or from a lower income family, whether you're black, brown, Caucasian, or any type of race, these products have really penetrated all socio and geopolitical demographics, which is really interesting to see. I had one person suggest to me, oh, well, this is a product for rich kids because only rich kids can afford to buy them. And actually, the answer is that's not true, because we've seen all demographics utilize these products. Rahul mentioned we represent the Los Angeles Unified School District. This is the second largest school district in the nation, with 670,000 students and 1,000 campuses. It is larger than most cities in terms of the people that it serves. And in that one district, you're going to see a swath of urban, suburban, rural, high income, low income, and all sorts of walks of life. So it's really very similar to the opioid epidemic in that way, which is to say that it has penetrated all walks of life.
Interesting. I imagine that this is going to be pretty expert intensive, right, Rahul? I mean, like you got products in play, labeling in play, damages analysis, and then causation, I'm assuming, as well. So I can't imagine these being cheap cases to litigate.
No, and that is part of the reason why the structure here with these coordinated proceedings, where there's a lot of law firms representing individuals, and then law firms like ours and John's, where we're representing the public entities. At the end of the day, we're leading the charge not just for our own personal clients, but leading it alongside other firms to sort of pool our resources and our efforts and our work so that we can get to the finish line on this. But you're right, like many of these mass tort type cases or mass actions, there's nothing inexpensive about litigating these cases. And part of it also is when you're dealing with the entities on the other side, JUUL, a multi-billion-dollar company, big tobacco backed, that they don't spare any expense in defending these cases either. So it's always a battle.
Yeah, I mean, generally, tobacco litigation, even though sometimes have ended up in good results, they're notoriously renowned for dragging these cases on for years and years and years. So, when you guys got involved, you probably knew that, knowing that it's tobacco backed and what kind of fight you guys are getting yourselves into. So, kudos to both of you and your firms. So you also mentioned, in the coordinated efforts, you guys are, working with the people that are representing individuals. So, is it the parents that are bringing the cases, or is it the minors that are being affected that are bringing the cases on an individual capacity?
Well, for purposes of personal injury cases, they can actually be for minors and for adults because if the device has harmed a person, really anybody can bring that case. You do see a disproportionate number of minors who have been injured because they're using these products more than adults because their lungs are smaller and less developed than adults, and they may be using them in excess of what an adult would or could or should use because they're minors. And that's what minors do, which is why it's particularly egregious to, manufacture and produce and promote these products to minors. So parents can bring these lawsuits on behalf of minor children. Adults who were injured as minors can bring these lawsuits, and adults themselves can bring these lawsuits. And we've really seen two types of lawsuits. One is a type of lawsuit that focuses on a physical injury that is resultant from the use of these products. For example, a type of lung injury or hospitalization that occurs from these products. And then we've also seen the type of cases that come from someone who's become addicted to nicotine because of these products. And the thrust behind that case is that they were originally marketed as a solution to addictive cigarettes or an alternative to addictive cigarettes, when in actuality, they're just as, if not more addictive, supplying more nicotine per puff than a cigarette. And so because of that, you've got those two types of cases that somebody can bring.
Sure. And Rahul, I'm not sure if JUUL is at all involved in this or not, but about maybe a couple of years ago, I was seeing quite a lot of lawsuits filed on injuries caused by e-cigarettes, not necessarily JUUL, but just e-cigarettes generally, from the batteries exploding, for example. Is that something that JUUL is going to be involved in litigation that you've seen as well?
No, so when you deal with those exploding batteries, those were relative to the vaping products that look almost like a cylinder. The JUUL products look like almost like a flash drive. But these cylinders, what they would do is you would inhale from the top, the battery would be inside, and then when the battery, which was defectively designed and manufactured, it would explode. And when you take an exploding battery in a contained source, it explodes and then it would just shoot upward, or it would catch fire when it's in the pocket of a consumer. So you'd have burn injuries from there. I've seen cases where individuals were actually inhaling at the time the battery exploded, and then it would actually be almost like a gun going through your mouth, a bullet going through. And so incredibly dangerous products. I'm not personally aware of any of those types of injury cases coming about with the JUUL products, but it's very possible. Only time will tell.
Right. I mean, I've seen some of these pictures. I mean, a lot of people keep these e-cigarettes in their front jean pockets, right? Well, their pockets, and kind of in a delicate area, and it doesn't look pretty. And of course, the facial injuries are crazy as well. So be mindful, people. We're kind of like getting towards the end of the show, and I really hope that we would talk about some fire litigation because it's coming up fire season. But maybe you guys would come on another show and we could do one just about fires. You guys have been really, really insightful. I mean, before we finish up, are there any last words of wisdom regarding JUUL or that kind of litigation that you guys want to leave our audience with?
The only thing I'd say is that so far, a little over 30 school districts in California have filed lawsuits, and that's a lot, and it's a great start. There are actually over 1,000 school districts in the state of California. And so there are still a lot of school districts that haven't heard about this or haven't teed this issue up. And so if there's anybody out there, if there's a parent, a school administrator, a teacher, who's wondering whether or not their school district has jumped into this issue without any financial risk to the school district, they should or could reach out to you or to us or reach out to their own school district to learn whether or not their school district can get involved. That's probably something that's worthwhile. I know that my kids are young, so they're not quite in school yet, but once they were, I'd want my school district to stand up and fight for resources, public resources, and of course of course, public health and student health. So that's the only thing I'd say is that this thing isn't over. It's just getting started. And the more school districts that join the fight, the stronger the movement can be.
Well put. And if anybody, contacts us, we'll obviously put you in touch with John or Rahul. But if you want, both of you want to give your email addresses out or your contact information, please do, so that they have direct, access to you. John, do you want to, or your secretaries? If not, I'll just forward them to you. Yeah.
Yeah, if they contact you, you can forward them to us. That'd be great.
Okay, sure thing. Same with you, Rahul.
Yeah, mine, and just my email address is Ravipudi, R-A-V as in Victor, I, P as in Paul, U, D as in David, I, at P as in Paul, S as in Sam, B as in boy, LAW.com. Feel free to reach out. And just to echo what John said, sometimes as a society affecting change, you have to be louder than other times. Here, using your voice, using your message, making sure that you as a parent, you as a student, you as a district, you don't want to stand for this and you want it to stop. It can happen. And the more of us that do it, the better positioned we are to get this eradicated.
Awesome. Guys, I can't thank you enough for being on the show and doing such amazing work, which is high risk yourselves. You're going to give up an amazing amount of time and resources to litigating these cases for, the kids in our communities. So thank you so much. And
thanks for having us,
John. I hope. Honestly, my pleasure. And I really, really hope you come back as far as talk about fire litigation. And John, yes, you will get another fruit basket for the fire litigation for you to come on the show. No problem. And Rahul, I'll see you on the Peloton circuit, my friend.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you again. And thanks very much for tuning in, guys. And until next time, keep it legal.